Hey, 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 welcome to another episode. I didn't think I was getting away with that.
I think you nailed it. I think you nailed it, Joe.
Great way to start.
Oh, man. Yeah, I wasn't going to try and do the Fat Albert voice with it, but I don't think that is PC in today's world at all.
Which would be totally against your brand of being Mr. PC. So
I know. I try to be very
good.
politically correct and toe that professional line at all times.
Obviously.
Let's try that again. Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Karaoke. And today we're going in a slightly different direction. We've got Matt Grimes here, who is the VP of Talent. He's going to be talking about something that I'm about to find out about as I present to you, but I'm guessing that based on Matt's background and passions, that it isn't about the deep insides of the tech or the business of selling a widget. With that, Matt, would you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience?
Yeah, of course. Great to meet everybody. Matt Grimes. I'm the VP of Talent and Executive Search at a company called Evolve Partners, LLC. I basically head up the business units for technology, marketing, growth, and talent advisory. I've spent about 10 years inside talent acquisition teams and startups across the DC area and nationwide reach from a remote perspective, and spent a little bit of time kind of building teams on the side from an executive search perspective as well. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Appreciate that, Matt. And I would have to imagine that doing that talent search within a startup world has to be an extremely demanding role.
It's definitely demanding. Keeps you on your toes. It's kind of like what we were just talking about with the woodworking. You're never done and you're always learning and there's always better ways to do something. But that's what I like. So it's been a blast.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And unfortunately, Ms. Schaefer, you showed up. So would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
You keep trying to give me different times, Joe, and I figure it out nonetheless. Yes. Your impartial judge, have no fear, is here and feeling feistier than ever. So, Joe, I hope you're ready. I
am ready. And for those that don't know me, I am universally known as that guy. So without further ado, Matt, are you ready to see me present your slides as if I know what the hell you talk about?
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to take notes. I haven't presented this one yet.
Somebody's already brought this up for me. I like this. This is a service with a smile. So what we're going to talk about here is how we win in the hiring game, how we can evolve things like executive search and talent advisory services to win. And obviously, hiring is a critical component of any given business. We need to bring the right people onto the team to ensure that we can have those people rowing in the correct direction. And if you look at hiring across any given industry or any given company, we aren't great at it. We end up bringing in a lot of the wrong players or the right people to the wrong fit and having to make a lot of changes. And all those changes cost us money. They cost us time. They cost us friction in our business. So any way we can improve bringing the right people with the right skill sets into our teams, we can improve the top line of the business. So let's take a look at how we can look at this. First, any business, the best team wins. Now, Matt's using a quote from a guy I despise passionately, but he is quoted quite often. Jack Welch, former CEO of GE, and kind of the guy that was the catalyst for taking GE from a world-renowned brand and turning it into a trash pile joke that has TV shows made about it. That was kind of Jack's claim to fame. But he had some really good business advice, and this particular quote is pretty awesome. Because what we're looking at is we need the best team to go out and deliver what we're doing. You can use that analogy across just about anything. You could take it to sports or anything else. The Chicago Bulls didn't win a bunch of championships with the wrong players. They had to have the right team. And that team was from the players on the court all the way up through the coach, bringing those players together and pointing them in a single direction. So to be successful in our business, we've got to have the right team. Otherwise, we're not going to be winning where we intend to win. So let's take that a step further. We've got having the right talent is how we win. So if we know that is the baseline, what are we going to do to ensure that we get better and better at bringing on that correct talent and hopefully keeping that talent over time? So the first thing we need to think about is how can we be really efficient and decisive in our hiring? we know there's significant challenges to this, but before we even get into the challenges, let's talk about one word Matt brought to the table here that you won't hear often, but I think is critical to success. Decisive. We don't just want to be efficient. We don't just want to identify the right talent quickly. We want to make a decision on that talent fast. We want to be decisive. When they are the right person, let's just get them in. When we're stringing someone along through 6-10 weeks of interviews trying to figure it out, we're not actually making better decisions on the back end of that. We're just creating friction in our process, not getting a person on board fast enough, and hopefully and probably annoying the heck out of a candidate that was right in the first place. So how do we get fast and good at doing this, but also being very decisive, knowing when we have the right candidate and bringing them in? We've got in many roles a scarcity of quality. We need to be able to address the fact that we have to sift through a lot of hay to find the needles. We've got an oversaturated market in many places. We've got overwhelmed talent teams. They're having to bring in a lot of people really quick into a lot of roles that they may not necessarily always have deep expertise in. And then we've got really misaligned metrics and motivations. And that's one that's near and dear to my heart. And I'll even speak for Sabrina and say it's very near and dear to her heart, because incentive drives behavior. If we don't have the right metrics and motivations for the teams bringing people on, then they're going to game the system based on the incentives we gave them. If those incentives are misaligned to the actual goal, then we're going to see results on the metrics we provided, but not results for the business. So we need a strategic solution that's versatile to be able to create those wins we need. We need trusted partners to be able to bring us along on this ride. So we need targeted sourcing techniques that can focus on the right pools of candidates for the right role, the right resource. We need the ability to take consistent candidate experience, not just this person won and did well once, but have they been consistent in the way in which they do that? And how can we identify that and bring that forward? We need to really think about our metrics and KPIs. What are we incentivizing and therefore driving behavior from? And we need a way to have trusted support and advisory throughout the life cycle of this process. And so these are really hard things to build, and they can also be really hard things to build internally, which becomes a really interesting model for us. Early in the days of Continuum, Sabrina was thinking about bringing on some graphic designers to the company to have graphic designers to help make everything look great before it went out. But then she realized that we're not a graphic design company, and we don't know necessarily how to manage graphic designers. So rather than bring on a bunch of graphic designers and try and build a graphic design team, why don't we find a graphic design agency that we can partner with, use as an internal part of our team, and get all that goodness, all that talent without the risk of having to try and figure out how to manage graphic designers? So the question then becomes, do I want to build out this function that has nothing to do with my core business, but supports the heck out of my core business? Or do I want to find the right partner to team up with? So when we look at that, we need to find a partner that can help us build the right talent funnel, right? How do we create that buzz around our sourcing of talent, of the next people, of the potential candidates? How do we get that funnel to boil down through engagement into assessing if they're the right fit, into selecting the right person for the role, and into hiring? And I'm going to guess that Matt would look at this as a continuous process. We need to constantly have that sourcing and attraction going, constantly be curating that engagement so that when we need to fill a role, we can move it through the assessment and selection phase into a hire without having to go back to the top of the funnel and start from scratch. So as we build that funnel out, what we're looking at is how do we bring together all of the different components that go into finding the right candidate for the right role in that given organization. We've got the expectations of leadership, we've got the expectations of the candidate themselves, and then we've got the business requirements and the process of hiring. Underneath that, we've got all these different components that add complexity to bringing together the external Venn diagram. So how do we keep all this moving to keep that cohesive funnel driving the right talent into my organization? We need to look at where our expectations are unrealistic and where our metrics hinder our hiring. So if we go back to the movie that everyone should be very familiar with, Office Space, and if you're not familiar with Office Space, just get off my lawn and cut your hair. If you could go ahead and find 150 candidates for my job, that would be great. But how are we finding the right candidates? And is giving Matt the metric of find me 150 candidates the right metric to give Matt? Because I'm guessing with Matt being as good at his role as he is, if I tell him get me 150 candidates, he can produce 150 candidates. But do I want to sift through 150 duds, or do I want Matt to be bringing me the right candidates? So is the metric I should be using 150 people, or is it 150 qualified people, or is it 150 qualified people with these 3-4 different skill sets, right? The more specificity we can provide to create that incentive that drives the behavior we want, the better. We don't just want candidates. We want candidates that could potentially be my next employee. So we need to align those metrics because it's a key driver to winning in the hiring game. Your talent teams are overwhelmed. They're operating as lean as possible, and they need to move with both volume, lots of candidates being filtered, but also speed. We need to ensure that quality and efficiency are part of our metrics. Instead of just sifting through more and more noise, reduce that noise and sift through better pools of qualified candidates. So when we look at these metrics, we've got high-level and low-level metrics, things like pipeline size, and then how much contact I'm doing within that pipeline, boiling all the way down to things like cost to hire. Then we get the unintended results of these metrics. So Matt's breaking down what happens when you drive the wrong incentives. If pipeline size is my goal, then I stack the deck by putting more and more duds into that pipeline. That doesn't actually create value for me. So what can I do? I can switch my metric to pipeline strength. How many of these candidates actually can make it through my vetting process? So instead of saying I need thousands of candidates, I need hundreds of candidates that could theoretically be the right candidate for the job. If we were to look at something like cost to hire, sure, there's a million ways to game the cost to hire metric, but if I'm gaming cost to hire alone, then I'm going to hire a lot more incorrect candidates cheaply. You're creating an incentive that drives the wrong behavior. You can end up with burnout, lack of support as an unintended result. So what should we really look at? Things like the return on investment and the impact of the way in which we hire and the hiring we do. So winning quality candidates takes effort and commitment. This isn't an easy process. It is a long and arduous process in many cases, but when you build these systems and these funnels correctly, then they pay off in rewards over time so that you can continue to get the right candidates out of those funnels. So we need to have the quality candidates. So here we've got my face when hiring managers think we hop on LinkedIn and it just rains qualified candidates. That's not how this works. I can go to LinkedIn and I can find any number of candidates I want, but I'm guessing when Matt's actually sourcing for me, Matt's having conversations with those candidates. He's actually scrubbing those resumes. He's looking at where those people want to be and where they fit into what you want for your organization. So you got two versions in my mind of the typical recruiter. You've got a lot of recruiters that have been the bane of my existence that reach out to me when I have CTO titles and say, hey, here's a 6-month contract MCSE role because anyone in tech must be the same. And then you've got the talent organizations that are actually vetting out the candidates, matching them to the role, and then having communication with them to find out if they are the right fit for your culture, your organization, that role, and the requirements of that role. So finding the right candidates isn't as simple as going through a database search on LinkedIn. We need to focus on search, process, and the right metrics. So here, 77% of execs see identifying quality talent as their most pressing challenge. They need to get the right people onto the boat so that they can get them all rowing in the same direction. So how do they find and hire that talent that's going to have that immediate recurring impact? So that impact that happens very quickly, driving value for the business, but continues over time. 3 big steps here. We need to have a good mapping of the market and strategic resourcing to our passive talent pools, that funnel that we talked about. We need a very efficient hiring process with detailed screening and consistent communication. So this is an interesting one because efficient hiring process is something we would all say is a no-brainer. I need an efficient hiring process. When I need to fill a role, I want to get it filled as fast as possible with a quality candidate. That's going to require a lot of detailed screening, which becomes another no-brainer. But then the consistent communication becomes important because you can see if you go look at LinkedIn over the last 6 months, a lot of candidates are burned out on the lack of communication in the hiring process. They go through months and months of testing. They go through doing homework for roles, and then they just get no communication. Things go dark. So that's not just losing you potential candidates, but that's turning people off to your organization. And then finally, we need to focus on the return on investment. What am I actually getting out of the back end of the talent funnel I'm building and the talent acquisition I have in place? How am I getting the right candidate experience? And how am I getting, once they're in, the right focus on tenure and promotion within my organization? If we take an overworked team and ask them to focus on quality and efficiency, you're probably not going to produce the results you expect. If my team is already overtapped and now I say, keep producing these numbers, but oh, by the way, add in quality and efficiency, chances of me getting results are not high. So I'm going to get somebody, in this case, working as a table saw in an extremely dangerous position where he's going to end up with a second crack in that butt. So how do we leverage an executive search firm to get across the goal line? First, focus on the quality. We want to know that we're targeting sourcing experts, people that really understand how to get the right talent within my organization for the roles I'm looking for. So for instance, I don't go to a security technologist firm if I'm looking for executive leadership. And I don't go to an executive leadership firm and look for security technologists. So I need to make sure that I'm finding the right partner and the right engagement for the model I'm looking for. I need a meticulous selection process to make sure that I'm only having to sift through the top 10%, meaning I'm offloading a lot of the work to the agency I'm paying to do the job. I need trusted resources. I need recurring impact year over year. Then I need to move into efficiency. How do I get proven results? How do I supplement the resources at the top of my funnel so that I can source the right people and screen them quickly? How can I have this be metrics driven, but ensure that those metrics are driving the actual behavior that I want on the back end? And then how can I operate with a company like that or with a resource like that as a strategic set of advisors? Trust their expertise and not tell them how to do their job, trying to use a resourcing firm in a micromanagement model, because that's not going to drive the results I need. So we get a dedicated, versatile recruiting partner that can actually lighten the load. And I love this. My recruiting partner should actually offload work from me, not just create a pool of unqualified candidates that I can now source through. I can get my candidate on the sixth and final interview because I'm offloading a lot of this work, and then I'm being decisive with my hiring decisions when we find the right people. Overall, we should evolve our technology, marketing, and growth aspects of how we're looking at sourcing. Technology across CTO and engineering leadership, down through things like data analytics. How can we find those marketing candidates from the executive level at the CMO suite, all the way down through digital marketing managers and the rest, with product management and strategy operations underneath. And then finally, how can we continue that growth? People that are going to come in and continue to grow my organizations. How do I find the right funnel for growth people? My CRO or chief revenue officer, my directors of sales, my revenue managers, BDRs and SDRs. These are different buckets that I need to ensure that my partner can actually source. So summarizing all of this, what I do have are a very particular set of skills I've acquired over a very long career. I will look for you. I will find you. I will recruit you. I want to hire the Liam Neeson of recruiting. I want to hire the person that does one thing and does it very well, because they're going to go out and find that candidate for me. And that's what I'm looking for. So I can go out and find the right partner with the Liam Neesons on staff that can use that very specific set of lifetime skills to go find me the right talent on the back end. And that is what I have to talk about today. Thank you very much.
I mean, well done. You
I was
sure you
hoping
want to keep working on Continuum?
Well, at least you got a job offer, Joe, and you know he can place you at a great place. So this is turning out to be a great day for you.
Unfortunately, Matt follows me on LinkedIn, so he knows I'm fully unhireable.
Right. That's right.
Oh. So do we get close, Matt? Are we in the realm of understanding how recruiting and hiring works?
Yeah, no, you absolutely nailed it. I think that toward the tail end there, I forgot that I kind of used this as a pitch deck initially, and I'm like, now I'm going to have Joe pitch it with services. So I probably should skip that last slide, which is where you kind of trailed off a lot. But everything else was on point. And there were a couple things that I think are important to go back to that I'll probably end up changing if I reuse some of these slides. I love the fact that you hit on the initial slide that had that talent funnel, and how something that's important to think about when you're talking about a funnel is not just the funnel, but it's a cyclical process. You're always looking how to improve and how to kind of have a passive candidate pool of your own. It doesn't necessarily just need to be a recruiting partner. If you keep, an active pulse on people that you want to be involved with the organization, that's a great way for you to win. It doesn't matter if you're going to hire them, in 2 weeks, or if you're going to hire them in 2 years. At least you can go back, and that's a good point to be made. And then the other thing I loved was the second butt crack comment. That got me. So that's the only one.
Like,
so I did get a little woodworking in. So it doesn't really technically count.
That counts. That counts.
Yeah, that was awesome. And it was funny because I got to that slide that was definitely kind of like what you do and what you focus on, and it was about 2 sentences in where I realized this has nothing to do with the talk track I was just on. This is like the specific places that Matt focuses, and it hit me. And I'm like, okay, the only thing to do is power through this, and hopefully nobody notices. But then you called me out on it, so now it's very blatant that I had no idea what I was talking to on that slide.
You're officially my favorite guest we've ever had, Matt. Thank you so much. Yeah, by all means.
You are welcome. Happy to be here. So, did you appreciate the memes? I didn't know how that was going to go over, but figured it'd be fun.
Yeah, no. I love the memes. We always love it when guests kind of drop in both humor and landmines for me. Things that I'm gonna have to figure out what the hell they meant on this slide.
It makes it better. It just makes it better.
Julia definitely gave me the heads up on that, so props to her.
Yeah, she's an awesome producer for the show. So Sabrina, what do you think? You are based on my awesome pitch of what Matt does in his world. Are you ready to hire him?
I would hire Matt. I still don't know if I would hire you. Does that change anything?
Okay. No. That makes sense. I think most of the world wonders why you hired me in the first place.
No, I think they get it, and I think that they admire me. Really, that I could have, been able to, I don't know, gotten this, this far, 4 years in. There you go.
Yeah. Well, I think what most people don't understand is that Sabrina had made a mistake earlier in her life, and she owed several thousand hours of community service, and she was able to work out me with count.
Yes, this is my punishment. This is it. No, you were wonderful to work with, Joe, and I'm going to make sure that post-production cuts this out. I said it. The three of us heard it. It shall never be repeated again. How about that?
Excellent. So, Matt, I'm going to speak for our audience and say they'd probably love to know what this whole talent acquisition thing is really about from the horse's mouth. If you're ready to tell us the real story.
Where should I start? I have another meme for that. It's basically It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. The Charlie meme where he's kind of got everything up on the board and you having to figure it out like a crazy person. Oftentimes it's like that, and I think just being able to kind of see through the noise and understand, if you go back to the slide that talks specifically around that Venn diagram, there truly are elements to recruiting that you don't see coming unless you've been in it long enough. There's the chaos theory, game theory, and I thought you'd like the stochastic model that I threw in there. Because there's elements of randomness, and it depends on the person. It depends on the people that are involved in the process. The reason that I didn't jump into the tech is it's truly just a tool in this game. And I think that the way that you elevate talent in general is through the people skills and the experience or the rotations in doing it. And now I'm rambling, but I think it's in a very concise way. The most important thing for me as I approach anything from a talent perspective is the amount of time that I get to spend with the client or with the individual doing the hiring to kind of pull back the veil or do a deep dive and understand the individual and what they're looking for, what's coming out of their mouth, what they're saying, but really what they're thinking. If you can get to that level of communication with someone, then it's going to help your process from start to finish. And then the other piece that I'll harp on continuously is, and you paused on this throughout the presentation, is the communication aspect. If you can level up your communication with your candidates and make sure that they have transparency into the process from start to finish, whether it's good or bad, you're going to be setting yourself up for success every single time. I run into challenges across the board with clients currently that, how do I put this delicately? I won't put it delicately. Kind of suck at hiring, right? They quite frankly don't understand exactly how to do it, and they don't think about candidate experience. That's okay. It's my job to be looking out for that. But what I can do is convey that message to a candidate. And so if somebody no-shows, or if there is some sort of scenario where there's a ghosting, they know it's coming. Like, that's better than just walking into something blind. So if there's a takeaway from this for anybody that's listening on the client side or, the candidate sides, push for transparency, deliver transparency, and you're going to be, doing 25% better than you have been, and probably 80% better than everybody else.
I love that. And I always think back to, like, I've never actually seen the show, but I know the premise of that undercover CEO show where the CEO goes in and works the day job of somebody at the company. And I think, like, the leadership of a company should go through their own hiring process. Just look at how miserable it is, because on the whole, they're all bad. Like, I've never been through an interview process that I would say, hey, this is smooth, efficient, and treats the candidate with respect. And I've been in this field for a long time. I'm also a little bit cynical, so take that with a grain of salt. But go get an idea of what this actually looks like. Because when you sit there and you submit your electronic resume and then have to fill out all that same information into 6 versions of application format. So now they have my electronic resume, and instead of automatically importing the data into the form, I've got to go reformat it as a human 10 times. And then I got to go do homework, and then I got to go do 6 interviews. And it's like, and most of the time I don't even have any expectations. Like, I've walked into a 1-hour interview and sat through a 6-hour gauntlet of more people stepping in front of me. And about person number 3, I'm like, goodbye. Like, this is not what I scheduled for. Not interested. See ya. And so maybe I was the wrong candidate. Maybe I was the right candidate and just have no interest in working for you anymore. And that's a bad thing to have in your process.
Yeah, I hear you. And it goes back to the aligned incentives things a lot too. I mean, as a director of talent, if you're doing your job, you're banging your head against the wall every day, right? Like, that is what you need to be doing. And the door, the wall is the leadership wall. You need to make sure that they understand how things trickle down and affect the people that are being hired and the people doing the hiring, right? If you have inexperienced recruiters that are only being harped on for volume, number of calls, and quite frankly, getting paid based on those metrics, they're not going to be thinking about things that elevate the talent game and thinking about things that provide transparency or improve communication or better the candidate experience, because they're not getting paid to do so. But if it's the only thing that's being talked about at the board, then it's the only thing that's going to trickle down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing that a lot of people don't end up realizing is the people you're going to turn off with a bad hiring process are the people with the most talent and the most options. So the people you're going to get left in a long, arduous, and miserable hiring process, the people you probably wouldn't want, they're not in all cases, right? And I'm not saying bad or good people. I'm just saying the people that are willing to stick through a nasty process, the people that really need a job. The top talent's just going to walk away and find another role somewhere else because they've got that marketability. So you really need to think this through. Otherwise, you're just going to end up with a layer below the talent you're looking for, because you're turning off the people you need.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think a lot of external search firms are effective at delivering quality talent, because anybody can find them. But if you have the time to nurture that candidate through the process, because you're not focused on metrics, or you're not focused on delivering the 15 other things that you have to focus on as a talent lead inside of an organization, then your only goal is to get somebody across the finish line. And so that's why there's the gap, I think, more so than like you're a better recruiter because you're an external search firm. That's not the case.
That makes sense. So what would you, and I hate to put you on the spot, but what would you see as kind of the pros and cons of an external search firm versus an internal organization?
Ooh.
An internal organization generally has better insight into the process, the nuance of the folks that you're going to be meeting with as a candidate, and can kind of pull strings a little bit more than an external recruiter can. So let's think about it as a pro for candidates. The pro for working with an internal recruiter is that you've got one extra step in the door. The pro for a candidate and working from an external perspective is sometimes we skip steps. And that's a good thing for you as a candidate. I've said this time and time again, it's probably inappropriate, but as an internal talent leader, my role was to mitigate bias as much as I possibly could, create a standardized process, and make sure that everybody was running through appropriately in the right way. As an external candidate, as an external recruiter, my job is to break that and add bias anywhere that I possibly can. The candidate needs to infuse themselves into the process, and you can leverage an external recruiter to do that. So the pro of working with an external recruiter is, you know who the decision maker is, you're working right with them. You're throwing resumes directly into their inbox as opposed to on a pile. And you get not more insight, but more specifics around what's really happening in the search so that you can use that when you're going through the interview process. As a person in the role, internal talent teams are a little bit, I've done both. So internal talent teams are a little bit more cushy. You're not fighting every day for business. But what you are fighting is red tape, and you're banging your head against the wall over and over to make sure that you're protecting your candidates, protecting your process. And oftentimes you're under-resourced and understaffed. So it's difficult. As an external team member, you're grinding all the time, but you have kind of an autonomy and flexibility and like a, not power, but an influence that you won't find as an internal team member, because you're listened to a little bit more, I wouldn't say respectfully, but you're heard. Let's just say you're heard more so than an internal talent team, because you've seen it over and over again across a number of different clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds to me like one of the things that you're hitting on is, if I'm going to use an external agency, I need to look at them as a partner, not a vendor. I need to incorporate them into my business and have them as part of my process, looking at them as kind of a long-term solution to the problem I'm trying to solve, versus somebody I throw money at to bring me a set of candidates once in a while, which tracks really well, for us. That's the same way we use external agencies. I mean, they'll end up on our team calls and stuff like that, so they know where our business is going and what's coming, and it helps create both the collaboration and team metric we need, but also keeps them abreast of what's coming down the pike that they might have to be responsible for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen that with a few folks that I've supported, and I've actually leveraged partners in my internal roles in that exact way. And it's always been the most successful search. And I think it's because it's a level of mutual respect that you don't find when you treat it as more of a transactional and kind of vendor type relationship. You're not really worth my time, but send me some people if it makes sense, versus, exactly what we're doing. You're not badgering me every 5 minutes because you understand we're not hiring for 2 months. But in the background, everyone you talk to, you're thinking, that could be a really good person for X company. Let me not send them, but let me clear them and make sure that they're good to go when and if that time presents itself. It's always good to have that kind of like just long-term partnership, long-term thought process.
Absolutely. All right. So Ms. Schaefer, what are your thoughts here?
I gotta say, because Matt, I also did not know what you were going to come to talk about. What's really surprised me the most is how, even as you were responding to Joe's question, you were responding from the candidate's perspective as opposed from your own. So I think that says a lot about you and a lot about how you approach your process, that you're not coming from what do I get out of this? I mean, just in the way you naturally answer that question. And I really liked, that slide that you pulled up to show the complexities of all that goes into it. As someone who, I always joke, but it's pretty true. My greatest talent is surrounding myself with really good people and building really powerful teams. That's what I'm good at. I know Joe excluded. But other than Joe, I've been doing great, No, I can't be that harsh on you, Joe. But
I had a great, brilliant leader once who said every team needs a dud. So I'm just your dud. That's all right.
I couldn't disagree more. I do not think every team needs a dud. I think that you can build teams of rock stars and A players. Is it scalable? Maybe, maybe not. But that's for another discussion. But in any event, I thought it was very interesting. And I'm glad you talked about the good and the bad and the ugly. You know, there's some parts of hiring, you know, again, I've been hiring for a minute, you know, for quite a while in my career. And the wrong person, the wrong hire can drastically change your team, can change your company. I mean, it could do some really, really harsh damage or propel you to the next level and then some. So it's just so incredibly critical. So I'm glad you didn't glamorize it and just talk about, well, here's all the perfect things about, you know, how easy it is or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad you brought it up. We already know Joe did terrible. Fortunately, you called him out on it, you know, early on, so that made my job a lot easier. But no, I think I've got a clear winner on this one.
Oh boy, I agree. I think Matt knows this space a lot better than I do, and I think one of the things I realized about how difficult your job is, Matt, is you really. Your job in some way is sales, but you've got two sets of customers. You've got the candidates as a customer and you've got the business as a customer, and you've got to be the partner and value add to both sides of that chain.
That's why I thought it was very interesting when you answered, well, let's look at this from the candidate's perspective. And I'm like, oh, I was wondering which way you would go with that. So behavioral analyst and me loved it. So there you go.
Yeah, I might need to get somebody to focus more heavily on BD if I keep doing it that way. But it's just the way that my mind is oriented. And I think that, you know, it definitely helps clients when you think about it from the candidate perspective and just instead of just purely going with the flow. And I think that is something that I see a lot of people struggle with and kind of ripples into some of the problems that you see across the larger talent market. If you're not comfortable enough and if you're not confident enough to be able to challenge a client or challenge the way something's being done, I don't really think that you're doing them the best service that you can.
Yeah, I know one of the ways that I engage with my customers is I completely ignore that old adage that the customer is always right. My job is to add value to my customer. When they're wrong, we call them out. And even in projects, I'll tell a customer, I'm like, look, I'm always going to give you our opinion on what the correct way is. But if you tell me the sky's red, I'll say the sky's red. If that's what it's got to be, we'll do that for you. But I'm at least going to let you know if I think there's a better way to do it, or maybe that color is blue.
Right. Yeah. And people need that. I mean, otherwise, how are you an advisor? Yeah, completely agree.
Well, this confirms why I call Matt first when anyone calls and says, hey, I need a good recruiter. I'm like, talk to Matt. He might not be the guy for you, but he'll know who to talk to. So Matt, I appreciate it. I appreciate your approach to this and kind of the people first mentality that you seem to just exude in everything you do.
Agree.
No, thank you all. This was great. I appreciate it.
Congrats on the win.
Yeah, congrats on the win. You'll get an awesome badge of kicking the donkey. So that's fantastic.
I'm going to add this to my profile on LinkedIn just to make sure everybody knows it.
It's the new verification, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so certifications is like XYZ, but oh yeah, here's where I kicked the donkey. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Matt and Sabrina. You were present, so I guess that
I was present. There's always room for improvement, Joseph.
If people want to learn more about you and what you do, and or just see the beautiful projects you do in your woodworking shop, where can they get more Matt?
Yeah, Matt Grimes on LinkedIn. Of course, that's my go-to. I spend way too much time there. But let's see, what is my email address? mgrimes@evolvepartnersllc.com. Shoot me a note, and I'll connect with anybody. Just support in any way that I can.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you, Matt, and thank you all for watching another episode of Tech Deck Karaoke. And we will see you again in another episode.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.